If you're being told, you have a chemical imbalance, Tucker, here's some Prozac, it's going to help adjust the chemicals, that's a lie.
If something's in imbalance, what's balance? Is there any science behind that at all?
No. It has never been proven. Most people believe that mental illness, that depression, all these things are caused by chemical imbalances.
66 million Americans total on these drugs.
According to the CDC in 2022, so those numbers could well be higher.
That's craziness.
There's this condition called PSSD, post-SSRI sexual dysfunction.
Oh, come on.
There's a whole movement. They're incredibly well organized on X, doing really important public awareness work around how many people either never regain sexual function when they come off.
What?
Some people haven't regained it for years. And
so they're just dead.
Yep.
Okay. Really? And no one's gone to jail for this?
So I read this piece in the New York Times about you that's actually kind of hostile. And the story seems to be that you were on psych meds for a lot of your young life and then you got off them. And that's bad. That's bad. You might lead people to do the same. You might lead them astray off psychiatric medication, out of therapy and into independent, happy life. Why would anyone be mad at you for getting off psych drugs?
It's a good question.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I think really there's just so much fear and greed and disconnection from emotional pain that people hear a story of someone who's decided to let go of dependence on professionals and pills and institutions, and they just can't fathom trying it for themselves because they've built their whole lives around this idea of being sick and needing treatment and needing medical expertise and institutional authorities to guide them. So to hear a story of someone who said, I'm not going to do that anymore, is to basically call into question their entire existence, their entire identity, their entire sense of self and purpose in the world. And it makes me feel sad. I feel sad about it because I'm just sharing my story. I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm just talking about what I did. And yet somehow a lot of people out there think I'm insulting them or attacking them. It baffles me.
And I understand everything that you've said. I mean, and I think you've got a lot of detail on this, but the country's pretty much addicted to these drugs. Like a huge percentage of the population takes them, can't get off them, unclear if they're benefiting from them. So I understand that you're poking at something that people rarely mention in public and that goes deep. On the other hand, I thought the goal was health and independence and joy and connection between people and productivity and creativity. And it doesn't even seem like those are considered virtuous goals by the New York Times, which does kind of give me the creeps a little bit.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, it is. It's dark.
Yeah, and I don't know if you looked at the comments on that New York Times article, or if you heard about the kerfuffle, that article caused the readership of the New York Times, but they had to shut the comments down after 1,300 just poured right in within a day of the article being out because people were just so outraged at how basically what a fascist I am for entertaining the idea that you can take your body and your well-being and your identity back from a very powerful industry that profits off of us being afraid of our suffering. And I'm literally a fascist now. I've been called
because you live quietly with your family in New England, not wanting to bother anybody or tell anyone what to do, but you're for nature and peace and independence, and that makes you a fascist.
Basically.
So amazing. Okay. I just wanted to set the stage for your story. So you're from Connecticut. You come from an intact family. We had dinner last night. I heard all of this. It's an amazing story. And but you wound up on psychiatric medications and it began this whole odyssey. Can you just tell us what happened to you?
Sure. So I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is, you picture the most stereotypical kind of upper middle class, affluent New England town, and it's Greenwich. And I was the kind of kid who was good at school. So I happened to know how to get A's on tests and memorize and regurgitate information well, and kind of follow the instructions of adult authority figures. So I was good at school. I was a good athlete. On paper, I had it all together, you could say. But when I was 13, I ended up having this profound experience one night in front of the bathroom mirror as I was brushing my teeth, and I had been elected president of the middle school at my all-girls private school. And the next day I was going to lead an assembly with the headmistress. And I just started looking deeper and deeper into my eyes as I was thinking about all that I had on my plate. And I ended up having this profound out-of-body experience where I lost touch with space and time, and everything went black around me. And I was just staring at this girl in the mirror until suddenly a stranger was looking back at me. And I was like, who is she? Who is she? What is this girl doing looking at me? I just was totally out of reality. And when I came to, the only conclusion I could draw about what this meant was that I didn't have a real self. I was just this programmed robot who'd been raised to perform well and have it all together. But who was I really? What did I really care about? What did I want to do with my life? I didn't know the answer to that. And that terrified me. And so I ended up trying to repress what had happened and pretend it hadn't happened. I didn't tell anyone about this out-of-body experience I'd had. And I just continued on performing well. But at home, eventually, I began to just, I couldn't hold it all in anymore. So I began to act out and scream and curse. And I started to get physical, and I'd push my mother. I'd terrify my sisters. I started slicing up my arms. I started thinking about death because, what was the point to this game that I had no agency in? And my poor parents were just shocked and stunned at, what had happened to their eldest daughter seemingly overnight. She was this, maniac, basically. And so they did what so many loving American parents are taught to do when their child is struggling. They took me to a professional because they internalized this story that they didn't have what they needed to help me. They needed to pay someone who'd studied about kids like me to help. So they sent me to a therapist.
So your parents are, I identify with the parent in this. They love you. They think everything's going great. You're killing it in school. You're staying within the boundaries. And then they don't have any idea what to do, basically.
Yep.
But they're motivated by love. Is that
very much so? They did what they thought would be the most helpful for me.
They're the opposite of negligent. I guess that's what I want to say. They're engaged.
Yeah, they did the best they could with the information that they had at their disposal, which was, really all they saw as a resource was the mental health system.
Yes.
There weren't any visible, support groups for parents of struggling teens. No one was talking about, my gosh, is your daughter also slicing up her arms too?
Right.
No one talked about this then. And so the only visible source they saw was a mental health professional. And this woman this therapist was a very kind woman. She had the best of intentions, but when I was sent to see her each week, to me at the time, I experienced it as this profound violation of my very being. I interpreted this as a sign that everyone around me thought I was defective. Yes. I was the problem. And I knew in my heart that the anger I felt and the despair I felt were actually really meaningful responses to the environment that I was growing up in, this really high pressured, intense environment where, it's just in the air itself that if you want to feel good about yourself, you have to excel. And I knew that was the problem, not me. But of course, I was 13. I didn't have the language to articulate this. I didn't have the sense of self yet to stand up for myself. So I ended up, doing what being sent to therapy each week. I felt humiliated. I felt ashamed. my poor parents didn't mean to, cause that in me, but I experienced therapy as basically a statement that I wasn't good enough as I was. And so it wasn't that long before the therapist ended up recommending to my parents that they send me to a psychiatrist because I was, pretty extreme. My difficulties were, it wasn't enough to just see a therapist. And so my parents took me to a psychiatrist. My mom took me to my first appointment. And in that first session, I was 14 by this time. In that first session, after sitting down with this woman, this stranger who I'd never met before, I think she'd been given some information about me by my parents and that therapist, but I'd never met her. I poured out all my pain to her. And at the end of that session, she said, "Have you heard of something called bipolar disorder?" And I was like, "What?" And she said, "Well, this anger that you feel, this irritability, these rages you're getting into, these are symptoms of something we call mania. And the despair and the injuring you're doing to yourself, these are symptoms of depression. And this is a condition that you'll have for the rest of your life, but don't worry, there are medications that will help you manage this."
At 14, she told you you're stuck with this for life?
For life. For life. That's how it always is. Anytime you're given a diagnosis by a psychiatrist, the baseline operating assumption is that this thing we call mental illness is an incurable condition that you treat and you manage. But that forms the premise of the entire business model of the psychiatric industry, is that these are incurable conditions that require treatment indefinitely. And there I was hearing this message as a 14-year-old girl. I'm like, excuse my language, I'm like, who the fuck does this woman think she is telling me this?
Exactly.
But that defiance that I felt, I had no one. I knew I couldn't resist, that if I resisted, that would be used against me. So I just kind of went along with it.
I resisted that. It's like you've been taken by the Bulgarian border police in 1975. Resistance is futile.
Well, it totally is. Well, and interestingly, just to like pan out for a moment to this whole broader mental health industry, at scale, that is when many people who resist their diagnosis or who tell their doctors, "I don't think I'm sick," or that's actually is used literally to reinforce just how sick you are. You lack insight, quote unquote, into your condition.
This is so Soviet. I mean, so like listening to the patient that's been taken out of the process.
It has, well, in the sense that, of course, the psychiatrist is listening for signs of symptoms. Okay, I'm listening past what they're saying so I can determine if this person is entering a hypomanic episode or her depression is worsening. But they're not listening to the patient. I'll speak for myself. My whole very well-meaning therapists and doctors over the years were not actually listening to me from a premise of me having of me knowing myself better than them, of me having wisdom, of me they lacked a respect for my own ability to kind of define for myself what my reality meant. So
it sounds like they went into the sessions knowing what you were sick with, and everything that you said was confirmation of what they already knew.
Exactly. It's all filtered through this clinical lens of translating your deep human experiences into this clinicalized language of symptom, illness, disease. And so they're trained to do that. And what ended up happening to me when I eventually bought into all of this by the time I was 18 is I learned how to do that to myself. And I just came to translate every single thought, emotion, behavior, decision through this medicalized lens of me having this sickness that was incurable and that these were all symptoms of it, basically.
But, okay, so you're 14. Can you imagine telling a 14-year-old you have a lifelong illness from which you will never recover, that will define you going forward? At 14, you're telling somebody that. On the basis of what evidence? Like, where did you catch this illness? Like, in the ladies' room at an airport? Like, where did they explain where you got this illness?
It's a very good question, Tucker. And it's a question that we should be asking all the time about literally every single psychiatric diagnosis that is ever given to any human being, because